This is the ModPod, brought to you by Modality, helping businesses optimize their Microsoft technologies everywhere.
Hello and welcome to episode 4 of the ModPod. Today's topics for you include: is Microsoft security offering up to the job? Do we need offices, and what will it look like in the future? And the light-hearted topic for today is: do you actually want to go back to the office? I am joined today by Ollie Jacobs, who is Head of Projects and PMO, and Dan Kenoy, who is Head of IT. Let's crack on with topic number 1. So topic number 1 for today is Microsoft's security offering up to the job? For those who have subscriptions to Microsoft, we have obviously E3 and E5, and there are a good number of security tools within there. Question for you guys is it good enough?
Well, I can kind of.
Should we be worried about the silence on that? Or should we... Go on, Dan.
Well,
you start.
I thought I'd let our IT head of IT go first, being probably more an expert on the subject than me. But
go on. What do you think, Dan?
Well, so yeah, I mean, there's no reason not to accept it and to question it, should I say? From personal experience, it's something that's actually helped us in the last 12 months. From an IT point of view, we were very much, we had to get hands-on with new devices before we rolled them out to users. And obviously, the last 12 months, that's not necessary. It's been difficult. If you see my living room at home, it's full of boxes, because we've had new starters start, and we've had to get hands-on with the devices. But sort of 3 to 6 months ago, we've rolled out Intune now, and or should I say Endpoint Manager?
Yes,
which has been renamed. And that has meant now that we can work with our suppliers to basically get us the hardware IDs of the devices, so they literally go straight from the IT distributor straight to the end user now, and we enroll them into Intune on our standard build, and that's been massive really for us over the last sort of 3 to 6 months since we've rolled out Intune.
That's with a load of security and policies and all stuff. So
yeah, exactly. So compliance policies and things like that involved. So there's a whole MDM solution for us. So I'm not saying that we wouldn't have gone down that road, but the fact that the pandemic situation that we're in is forced our hands to do that, and it's made things logistically a lot easier for us.
Cool. Okay.
And from a user perspective, because I definitely class myself in this audience as a user, I am a fan of the Microsoft Security Suite because it simplifies that user experience. It's almost seamless. And a hat I used to wear as looking after IT in a previous company, we had a disparate number of different security platforms. So we talk about security in layers. So you've got your firewalls all the way through to your Cisco firewalls, Juniper VPN concentrators, MDM solutions. I think we have Mobile Iron, other MDM solutions are available. And while we were meeting the needs of the business that I worked for at the time, which was a small private equity house, so some sensitive financial data that they had, we were aligning our security to be very strong. But in conversations with a friend of mine, my best man, in fact, who works high up in a French investment bank, while we were having weekend drinks and things, he would complain to me endlessly about the IT in his company. And one of the things was the layers of security that he had to get through to do his job. And I'm going back 10 years now. So, and I think they did a review in his company that people had to go through 7+ passwords to get to the services that they wanted to get to, and even more so if they were trying to work remote. So 6 years ago, when I then joined Modality after living in that environment where, we're congratulating ourselves for being really secure, and I get handed a Modality laptop with the full Microsoft suite, and I log on and I'm on. There was no VPN. There was no additional layers of security. The environment was secure, is secure, but the user experience from my point of view was so much better, and I could just get on and do my job.
Yeah, I think that's an absolutely critical thing, isn't it? It's got to be really usable for the users. Now, I would say that we've obviously got various different components of the security offering in play internally, but the most I really see it, I guess, is logging on in the morning with fingerprint for me. I just have to make sure I keep my fingers safe so that nobody knows that I use that to log on now. But outside of that, I'll get the authentication challenge from the from the MFA. But I don't really see as a user anything else particularly. It's not something that sort of sits up in your face. You've got little icons in your tray saying it's doing things and all that sort of stuff. But as an end user, it's quite simple.
A question from me being the user then, like my experience is much better. So I guess you think of it as the triangle of cost, quality, and whatnot. My quality of working experience has revolutionized, but on the other side of the triangle, if you've got the level of security for you guys, are we any less secure? Have we compromised on security to make my user experience that much better?
Yours personally, yes, obviously. No, I think, and I think this is one of the points I wanted to talk about. Is in my mind, if you look at what is involved in, but we'll take the E5 stack, right? Because lots of customers have been sold the E5 stack, they bought it. They haven't necessarily turned on all the components and enabled it. But if you look at it, you've got your MFA, you've got the conditional access, you've got DLP, you've got rights management, you've got endpoint management, you've got there's loads and loads and loads of bits. And so the question I want to ask you two is, does having that breadth of everything, which is possibly, if you take it as an individual component, maybe not as strong as some of the point solutions, but is it a case of, if you've got to buy 12 different point solutions, it's going to be a poor user experience potentially? You've got loads of systems to manage. Do people then not bother deploying all of those various components? Whereas if you take that E5 approach, it's pretty seamless. And although the individual items, maybe it's a grab a cup of tea and sit and have a conversation about whether things are better or not better than the point solutions, but you're getting that breadth. So it's very easy for an organization to become secure across the board very easily. So I think there's a trade somewhere, isn't there?
I think it gives great value for money, and who doesn't want that? You're getting a lot.
Pay the bills for us, don't you?
Yes, you're getting a lot, and that doesn't necessarily mean you have to turn all those bells and whistles on, but you've got that functionality. But from like, we all want to live in a more secure world when it comes to cyber criminality and security. It's very hot on everyone's topic. Especially when, as I say, everyone's now working from home. You're not in those secure bubbles of an office environment or an office network infrastructure. But for me, it almost leads the horse to water in terms of promoting best practice, because if you've got those bells and whistles to turn on, you might not do them straight away, but you're certainly going to consider them in the short to medium term to look to get there. And whether that's MFA or data retention policies, or sorry, data loss prevention policies, or retention labels or data classification labels. You might not do that as you turn it on. Your first point might be, I'm going to enable MFA, but you enable MFA, but now I want to start looking at my data, so I'm going to have retention labels and data classification labels. That might come down the line, and it takes a little bit of user education as well. Ollie being our user case, we might need to hold his hand.
Licking itself.
we might need to hold his hand and show him, this is how you classify information, and once you've done that, that automatically means it's going to have a lifespan of 12 months, 36 months, whatever.
Do you think, you're obviously in a sort of more advantageous position than maybe other organizations that have had the E5 bought for them, for etc. Do you think if you went to an organization and said, okay, tell us what your MFA is, your conditional access is, your DLP is, your retention policies are, how many of those organizations would be able to go, yeah, we've got a solution for all of them? I reckon it's probably quite small.
Yeah, I agree. I think, but it also, I think, depends on the size of the organization as well.
How difficult is it to manage that security angle once it's in and running?
Fairly. It's not easy. As I said, there's a bit of user education in there. And we're lucky enough, I suppose, at Modality, we're a tech company, so a majority of the people we deal with, or that we employ, should I say, are tech savvy. You don't need to talk them through how to add an MFA app on their phone.
You say that, Dan. So one of the things that one of the questions I was going to come to on this is what we've got the technology. So you've got your E5 license, and you've got the layers of security that you implement to protect us, the users, from the horribleness that's out there. But is there any need to sacrifice, or is there still a distinct need for some of the education programs that go on? And I think I know the answer to this question, because I know you do this, Dan, don't you, with sort of fake phishing emails and the like. And for me, is that still a necessary layer of security?
Yeah, yes, because we all do it regardless of our level of technical competencies. We do need to be reminded. A phishing email, for example, you could someone like myself, as say, worked in IT. We should be able to spot a phishing email from a normal one quite easily. However, if I'm massively busy and I'm distracted with IMs and Teams calls and all the rest of it going on, and I'm trying to read an email while I'm taking part in a meeting, my focus isn't in the content of the phishing email. So yeah, you do need those continuous educational prompts and training.
You need to bring it back to the front of mind, don't you?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Exactly. Plus, there's what you're trying to combat is trying to stay ahead of the game, ahead of those cyber criminals. So they're forever changing their tactics. So you have to be forever educating your users on the new tactics.
And that's a really, really valid point, in the fact that you as the person owning our IT systems and all of the security goes with it, you can absolutely nail it down. But the weakness then becomes your user.
Exactly.
Because once you're logged in.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And you bring up, using the Microsoft Attack Simulator in the security and compliance module for Microsoft. I have deliberately kind of made some of those phishing emails that we've sent out, really easy to spot, but I've also been them really hard to spot as well.
I found that quite insightful when you sent those out, and because you say we're a tech company, and again, I consider myself, I've come from a technology background, much less hands-on these days, but have a knowledge. But it's still exactly like you say, when your focus isn't there, or you're just not. Technology moves on. So if you've been away from the front line for a little bit, I might not know the tips and tricks to spot a phishing email now. So I think there's a huge amount of value in doing those campaigns. That's one layer of security, is to do the education piece, and then to not name and shame, but publish the results with like anonymous results, because it's really insightful.
Right. Enough. It's confession time.
I wonder how long it was.
Yeah, I was sitting there going, I'm not talking about it. I mean, I've been in this 25 years, and email was where I sort of cut my teeth. So I'm going back, to the days of MS Mail and stuff like that. And Dan caught me at exactly the wrong point, and I clicked on the link, and I was too busy doing too many things. So it doesn't matter how aware you are of what these risks are. You just catch it at the wrong point, and you're caught. It's that simple. Luckily, it was one you did, and you tend to stop everything else coming in that's genuine anyway. But sorry, that doesn't sound right.
So those phishing emails, Dan, that you send in, that's part of the Microsoft security suite. That's a facility within the E5 license, is it?
And it was something that we actually used to use a third party for, and we used to pay quite a lot of money for, to be honest with you. They labeled it as a social engineering test, so they would go one step further, and they would go and harvest as many email addresses as they possibly could for the business. So using things like LinkedIn and things like that, and working out who was who, and then they would then target a phishing campaign with the email addresses they harvest out there on the internet. But when Microsoft included the attack simulator into the security and compliance piece, we kind of thought, well, okay, let's get this a go, because we can do this more regularly with our users. The reports are coming direct, and we can target part of the induction process, and as I say, periodic tests. When everyone are really busy, like the time that we caught Pete.
I don't have to keep mentioning it.
Sorry. But we can be specific, but we also use it to test our internal processes as well, of how we deal with a potential data breach and outbreak as well. So the last one we did triggered it via the Microsoft attack simulator, and it wasn't more of a case of reporting on the users that clicked on the link. It was more of a case of how internally we would report that, and then how we would deal with that. And then again, part of that process is we would then use effectively the Microsoft tooling to effectively, someone would alert it to IT. We would look at that process, or look at that phishing email and go, yeah, this is definitely, who else has it gone to? Then we would actively, using the Microsoft tooling, go and actively search people's mailboxes to soft delete or hard delete that email. So you can use it to educate your users, but you can also use it to test your processes when these types of things happen.
Cool. Right. I think we need to wrap this one up here. I think generally, from what I'm hearing, apart from Muppets like myself, that actually, the offering is pretty sound. It's pretty broad. It's pretty comprehensive. Is it potentially as feature rich as some of the specialist point solutions? No, probably not. But actually having that wider cover to a really good level is probably a much more sensible approach.
And it's a great user experience.
Indeed. Right. Let's go on to number 2.
Okay, so one of the topics that I wanted to talk about is something that's constantly being discussed between family and friends during the last couple of months, really, is the question that gets asked to me is, when are you going back to work, Dan? When are you going back to the office? So the question, I suppose, is, now that everyone's embraced remote working, is, do we actually need offices in the future?
I mean, this is something we've sort of touched on, I guess, before. We've got to put it in context, right? There are going to be some areas where working from home is not practical. So frontline manufacturing, all of that sort of stuff. Can't take your milling machine home with you, can you? No, it's not that kind of thing. But I think with the more traditional office type, the people who have been able to work over the last 12 months, I think it would be interesting to hear the counter arguments as to why you would need one. So I've mentioned it before, but I think I wrote a thing a while ago that basically said that the role of the office would change and it would become much more based around a social hub rather than actually being the place you went to do your work. But if you look at somebody like me, and I don't think you're massively dissimilar, Ollie, for me to get into the office is 2 hours, hour and 45 by the time I've parked up, and then saying hello to people on the way in, etc. So put that on each way, it cuts out a very big chunk or adds on a very big chunk of the day. So nothing, a lot of the organizations now, nothing's broken. I don't think we need the office in its current form for businesses.
Yeah, it's interesting because you mentioned, frontline workers, obviously, manufacturing. Was the one that I picked up on you mentioned there, because I have let's say a friend or family member that works in manufacturing, and they, maybe sort of 6 to 12 months before lockdown happened, March last year in the UK, they had a separate warehouse where they'd done their manufacturing, and they had a separate office where they did the office admin, if you like, sales, things like that. And they actually went and bought a new premise, so the manufacturing and warehouse piece was all, and the office piece was all on one site.